On unsuspecting students made his first court appearance tonight. 23-year-old Samuel Opoku is facing numerous charges, including assault with a weapon and mischief. Greg Ross was at the Old City Hall courthouse today and joins us now. Greg, what happened in court?
Well, Dwight, Opoku was here for a bail hearing after being arrested last night. And as you know, this story has been reverberating around the university campuses where these attacks took place. And word of this hearing also spread very quickly. In fact, there were about a couple of dozen university students who showed up here bright and early this morning because they wanted to be inside that courtroom. They tell me they wanted to see what was going to happen. It was a hearing that lasted only 10 minutes. The accused, Samuel Opoku, spent most of it hunched forward in his seat with his head hanging down, staring at the floor. A publication ban prevents us from reporting much of what was discussed in the courtroom, but afterwards, Opoku's lawyer said this about his client.
He was in shock. I think that's probably a fair characterization. Understandably, to say the least, it's not a pleasant situation to be sitting in a courtroom with the public scrutiny that he's currently having to endure. And it's obviously overwhelming, as it would be for anybody.
Opoku is accused of 3 separate attacks. This video was captured in the aftermath of an attack Sunday night at York University. There were also attacks on Friday and Monday at the University of Toronto campus. In each case, unsuspecting students had what is believed to be feces dumped on them.
It's almost unexplainable, right? Like, why would somebody grab a bucket of poop and dump it on somebody's head, some innocent person's head?
These University of Toronto students were among the large group that packed the courtroom this morning, wanting to get a glimpse of the man that was arrested for this vile act. Why was it important for you to be here today?
I think as students, we just really needed some closure and some explanations.
Second-year law student Ruth Masuka says over the 5 days the attacks occurred, students felt unsafe on their own campuses.
The aftermath of this, you can still feel it, but I think the fact that he is in custody kind of gives us like relief, like, oh, you know, there is something that happened out of this.
There have been some questions raised about Opoku's mental health, something his lawyer could not shed any light on today, but did say this.
There's no fitness concerns at all. He obviously understands the nature of the proceedings, absolutely.
Now, there was no decision made today on whether or not Opoku will get bail. This hearing was adjourned until December 3rd, and Opoku will remain in custody until at least then, Dwight.
Thank you, Greg. A major disruption for transit users along Queen Street tonight. The TTC has pulled the 501 Queen streetcar out of service because something on the route was affecting the vehicle's brakes. Angelina King joins us live from Queen tonight. And Angelina, how is this impacting customers?
Well, Dwight, for one, they're all having to line up and wait for buses and crowd onto them. It wasn't too bad earlier, but the last few buses that I've seen come by didn't have enough room to fit everybody on it. Now, this can be a busy route on a good day, so you can imagine some people's frustration as we head into the busiest part of rush hour. So all of the streetcars have been pulled from Queen Street, as well as from the 508 Lakeshore line as well. Now here, the 501 line on Queen is 25 kilometers long. It runs all the way from Long Branch in Etobicoke to Neville Park in the Beach, one of the longest streetcar routes in North America and one of the busiest here in the city, with more than 43,000 people using it every day. Now the TTC says all of this has to do with brakes being damaged on 7 streetcars along the route. They're looking into what caused that, including the possibility of some type of damage along the line. So they're looking into that right now. The TTC says that it's taken the streetcars out of service out of an abundance of caution, saying safety always comes first. Now, we did speak with some customers today, asked them how their commute has been doing so far, and they seem to be taking it in stride.
I'm okay with it. Bus is fine, as long as it comes, you know.
So it's a lot more capacity on a streetcar, but buses can navigate traffic a bit easier. Pedestrians-wise, especially when you have to step off the curb into traffic, you don't have that problem with a bus.
How is this going to affect your commute?
Well, if I get on that bus, then it won't at all, but it would usually be an inconvenience for me. It's hard to get on a streetcar most days at rush hour.
So there's usually 35 streetcars along this route. They have been replaced with 80 to 90 buses. There's also added service along the King Street line. Right now, the TTC says it doesn't know when things will be back up and running as normal, but a lot of commuters say hopefully by rush hour tomorrow morning. Dwight?
Hopefully. Thank you, Angelina. Restaurants in Toronto post Dine Safe cards that let guests know if the place they're about to walk into meets health and safety standards. And soon, landlords will have to do something similar for their properties. As City Hall reporter Lauren Pelly tells us, Council voted today to beef up protections for renters.
With its boarded up windows and doors, you'd be forgiven for thinking this is an abandoned building. But for the last decade and a half, it's actually been Renan Yelazdan's home.
Everybody splits to the top and to the right.
He says the hallways have always been in disarray with peeling paint and clutter.
This building is like the old owners and the new owners, they didn't spend a dime on it.
Yelazdan says the latest owner wants everyone out, issuing eviction notices in hopes of turning the space into condos and cutting off the building's heat. He questions why the city has never stepped in.
The whole rental safe program, which doesn't even work. People don't even, they're supposed to be coming here taking temperatures and enforcing the landlords to clean up the hallways, garbage pickup. They haven't done any of that.
Madam Speaker, the only thing that I'm asking for...
In hopes of protecting tenants, Council voted today to beef up that rent-safe initiative. It will now require landlords to be more transparent about building issues, things like fire code violations and pest management policies.
Once the recommendations come into force, buildings will have to post their rent-safe cards, much like how Toronto restaurants have to post these red, yellow, and green dine-safe cards.
It matters because the incoming tenants will be aware of the situations in the building.
The city also intends to ask the province for new powers to investigate violations while they're happening, not after the fact, through lengthy battles at the Landlord and Tenant Board.
There are so many landlords these days that are moving ahead with rent evictions or pretending that they're moving a family member in only to vacate the unit, push the tenant out, and hike the rent to make more money. And these tenants' lives are just put in disarray.
Tenants like Yelazdan, who hopes no one else has to experience what he's going through.
The landlord to this building has profited almost $200,000 from just me and Natasha in this unit over the course of 13 years. And for them to go, okay, that's it, it's over now, you leave. Well, okay, well, where are we supposed to go?
Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Almost 5,000 parking tickets were given out on one street near Yonge and Dundas Square last year, making it the highest number of tickets given out by the city at one address. That's according to data obtained by CBC Toronto.
The construction zone is using all the parking spots. I assume that's the only reason why. And nobody really pays attention to the signs.
It's a little deceiving as well because you think you can park on the whole street, but it's just little gaps, right? I actually got one before, and it was just motorcycle parking back there, but I didn't realize.
So I've come here and the meter's actually not been out. I have like 10 minutes and they're already writing up the ticket.
It's very car-centric town, and yet there's not nearly enough parking spots for them.
About $230,000 in fines were issued to drivers at 20 Edward Street. The street has no legal parking on the north side, so city staff frequently patrol the area. Also at the top of the list, Bayview near Sunnybrook Hospital and Military Trail at the University of Toronto Scarborough campus. With both of these locations, most of the fines were because people didn't pay for parking. Overall, though, more than 2 million parking tickets were issued in Toronto last year, with fines topping $100 million. Now, to see the top 10 spots in our city with the most parking tickets, just head online to our website. That's at cbc.ca/Toronto. And if you want to avoid those parking tickets, there soon will be another way to get around the city. The province is launching an e-scooter pilot project. The project will start on January 1st and will last for at least 5 years. The province says the pilot will give people a new and clean way to get around, but there are some rules you must follow. You must be at least 16 years old to ride an e-scooter, and you must wear a helmet. The scooters also must have a horn or bell and have a light on the front and back. Municipalities will have the choice to allow e-scooters on their roadways, including in parks and trails. The death of a 14-year-old Hamilton boy moved the province to come up with new strategies to deal with bullying. That's according to the education minister. Stephen Lecce outlined the new plan today. Lisa Shing has the details.
There are people out there that love you and care about you.
A message from Ontario's education minister to kids who experience bullying.
At how we can improve the safety of children so that there's no more examples, that there's no more victims, especially for the young man cited in Hamilton and for so many others.
That young man in Hamilton is Devin Selvey. The 14-year-old was stabbed to death outside of his school. His mother, Sherry Ann, said she tried to tell the school her son was being bullied by other kids.
We've been trying to get this dealt with. Everyone failed my son, even I did. I tried to save him and I couldn't.
It really motivated the government to take immediate action. We have
Today, Stephen Lecce announced new measures to stamp out bullying. MPP Christina Midas will advise the minister on the issue. The province will also send out a survey and train teachers on anti-bullying and de-escalation.
I would have liked to see some really tangible measures being announced, not more surveys and another promotion for one of their MPPs.
This youth worker points out there's no new funding for these initiatives.
Those steps look good on paper, but in practice really amount to nothing.
So why isn't it good enough?
But it's no tangible steps that can be used to affect actual change. It's more just reviewing, and reinventing the wheel because reviews have already been done.
The Ministry of Education says it's reviewing its policies to make sure they accurately reflect the forms of bullying students are facing. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
And alliteration for the words of the day, weather words that is, Nick, wet and windy.
Yeah, wet, windy, although the temperatures were actually not too bad today. Yeah, we've got it all to talk about. I'm going to start with the rain. I've had to pick one. So a few rain showers through today. The bulk of it kind of passed by about 3 p.m. this afternoon. Still looking at a few spotty showers through tonight, and that'll carry into the overnight period as well. But again, most of the rain is now pushed off toward the east. So that was number one. Number two, of course, was the winds. Now we've got wind warnings in effect in the north shores of Lake Erie with wind gusts approaching 100 kilometers per hour. We felt some of that in the GTA, although it wasn't quite as bad as these areas down here because the winds are coming right off of the water. So they've got a long stretch without any obstruction. That's why they can kind of pick up. Although even in the city of Toronto, we had wind gusts to about 50, at times approaching 60 kilometers per hour. There are special weather statements in effect down towards southwestern Ontario. And this also includes, by the way, all the way up into Hamilton, the Niagara region as well. Right now, we're looking at wind gusts at 61 kilometers per hour in the city of Toronto. That's a look at current wind gusts. But again, they were even higher down in St. Catharines, up around that 80 mark just an hour or so ago. We did hit 10 degrees today. We're now sitting at 8 degrees, and the temperatures will start to come down. That's all in the wake of a cold front that's going to move through. So the winds are going to shift out of the northwest 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. And then tomorrow, lighter on the side of the winds, not so warm in terms of temperatures. And by the weekend, we're talking snow again. Dwight, I'm going to leave you with that.
That's a good way to end it.
I'm going to let you ponder that for a bit, and I'll come back with more.
Thank you, sir. It is one of the busiest travel days of the year in the U.S. Millions of people head out of town to be with family and friends for Thanksgiving. More than 30 million of them will travel by air, but weather warnings and travel advisories across the country could ground some of those planes. Take a look at these pictures out of Denver International Airport. It was hit by a blizzard yesterday, dumping more than 30 centimeters of snow in parts of Colorado. Hundreds of flights were initially delayed or canceled, but they are now resuming. Clearly, nature has its own Thanksgiving plans. Susan Ormiston has more on the multiple storms causing travel woes right across the U.S.
It's winter. That's not news, but this is Southern California, and 55 million Americans are traveling on the eve of Thanksgiving, many in stormy conditions.
It just got to the point where, we couldn't keep up, and we ran out of tow trucks, and emergency personnel was stretched about as thin as we could be.
A projected 2.7 million are supposed to fly, and that would be a record. Any nasty weather creates havoc, and it has. Yesterday and overnight, 2 big winter storms in 3 areas of the country.
A lot of us here stranded and can't get to our locations where we can be with our families for Thanksgiving.
A so-called bomb cyclone hit the Pacific Northwest, bringing Category 1 hurricane winds, heavy rains, and deep snow in the mountains. A 70-car pileup snarled traffic in Washington state. A tornado tore through Mississippi, wrecking holiday plans. And the U.S. National Weather Service has dozens of weather watches and warnings ongoing. And a third potent storm is on its way to the northeast, where if winds gust too high, they will ground the giant balloons ready for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
The weather for Thursday is supposed to be a bit windy. Like last year, we had a similar forecast, and it'll be the same as this year. It'll be a game day decision on what we're going to do with the balloons.
So, turkey, cranberry, and snow on the menu for this holiday weekend. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Washington.
After the break, we look into the millions of dollars the Chinese tech giant Huawei has poured into Canadian universities. Who's really benefiting from tech innovations at our schools? That story coming up. Stay with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
A not guilty verdict today in the so-called Good Samaritan trial in Hamilton. This was a shocking case of a 19-year-old university student shot in the abdomen after he shouted at two men he saw bothering an older man across the street from his mosque. Mike Weiss joins us now with the details. Mike.
Well, Dwight, the jury found Dale King not guilty today after he testified he fired his gun in self-defense. Now, just to back up, this happened almost 2 years ago, December 2017. Yosef Al-Haznawi, a 19-year-old Brock University student, was standing outside his mosque on Main Street East in Hamilton. That's when he saw Dale King and a friend of his bothering an older man across the street. He said something to intervene. He was hailed as a good Samaritan for doing so. But what happened next, the court heard, was that King and his friend crossed the street to face Al-Haznawi, his brother, and two friends, and then he flashed a gun at them. Now, King says rather than being afraid, Al-Haznawi challenged him, ran after him, and that's why he fired a shot. King testified he thought Al-Haznawi had his own knife or his own gun, since he found it strange that instead of being afraid at the sight of the gun, he chased him down instead. He also said he didn't realize his bullet hit Al-Haznawi at the time. Now, he died in hospital about an hour later. At the court today, King broke down in tears when the verdict was read. Now, Al-Haznawi's mother, Amal, had been in the trial every day. She left the court quickly without talking to reporters. A police officer who was with her says she was shocked at the jury's verdict.
Amal is, she's very upset, obviously. I don't know how else I can phrase it. She's quite upset.
Now, I should say that friend who was with Dale King the night of the shooting pleaded guilty last year to obstruction of justice. And two Hamilton paramedics will face a trial in the new year related to this. They're accused of not taking Al-Haznawi's injuries seriously enough at the time. And they're facing charges of failing to provide the necessaries of life. Dwight?
Thank you for that, Mike. New figures from Stats Canada show a drop in the number of homicides last year, with one major exception, Ontario. There was a record number of homicides in this province in 2018, mostly because of murders here in Toronto. Firearms-related homicides were also up in the province, while those numbers dropped everywhere else in Canada. Across the country, the only type of murder to show an increase was spousal homicide. Also of note, the rate of Indigenous homicide remains about 5 times higher than for non-Indigenous people. Today is Tamil Remembrance Day, honoring hundreds of thousands that died in the Civil War. And although it's been 10 years since the war ended in Sri Lanka, old wounds are opening up within the GTA's Tamil community.
I think just with the recent election in Sri Lanka, it's quite concerning because the same regime that was in power at the height of the Tamil Civil War is kind of back in power right now.
10 days ago, Gotabaya Rajapaksa was elected president. He was the defense minister during the height of the war and also happens to be the brother of the former president at that time. His new role is making some people in the Tamil community fear for the future, hoping it won't take them back 10 years. Hong Kong police have been combing through a university campus, which was the center of a 10-day siege. This video shows the aftermath of a long standoff between the police and anti-government protesters. About 1,100 people either left the campus or were arrested. University staff are checking to make sure no one else is inside. Hong Kong has been rocked by months of demonstrations. Many protesters are unhappy with how Beijing is controlling the semi-autonomous territory. Sunday saw many pro-democracy candidates win in local elections, seen as a strong rebuke to the China-backed leadership of Carrie Lam. And CBC News has learned that Chinese tech giant Huawei has been spending big money funding research at Canadian universities. It's given more than $56 million to at least 17 schools over the last 5 years. But it is raising some concerns. Who's really benefiting from the technological innovations done in our top universities? Peter Armstrong has the details.
In a cramped Markham lab, Huawei researchers push the boundaries of the next generation of technology. All three researchers are products of Canadian universities trying to put their studies to work in the real world. A real world where Huawei is fighting against accusations that it's a very real threat to the security of Western nations.
We start creating a prototype and coding in order to show how feasible it is.
Huawei employs some 1,200 people in Canada. Nearly 1,000 of those are doing R&D. The company's VP of Corporate Affairs says Huawei is one of Canada's top spenders on information and communication technology research.
We would be, if not the biggest, then certainly one of the two biggest.
To do that, it's partnered with some of the biggest universities in Canada. CBC News has found 17 schools have had some kind of financial relationship with Huawei. Simon Fraser University in BC has agreements worth $8.5 million. The University of Alberta has deals worth $7.7 million. Waterloo tops the list with more than $15.3 million. U of T with more than $6.5 million. All told, Huawei is spending more than $56 million at Canadian universities. Huawei says it's committed to keeping the information in the public domain.
The researchers who collaborate with us have the ability to commercialize the research themselves.
What are the terms under which the patents are assigned, and are they being done in a way that are coherent with the Canadian government's foreign policy, foreign national security objectives?
Critics say the universities must have guidance.
Frankly, the government of Canada has fallen down catastrophically because it's just meant that no one knows exactly what they should be doing.
The federal cabinet has only just been appointed, but these questions around Huawei, its research, and how Canadians will use the next round of technology must be at the top of the list of priorities. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Still ahead, she's the swole septuagenarian who's become a viral sensation. We'll introduce you to this 73-year-old from Cobourg who went from hating being in photos to becoming an Instagram sensation. That's coming up. But first,
I'm Talia Ricci, and coming up, we'll show you how empathy is being incorporated into police training using virtual reality.
Tell me what happened, bud. I've been there, man. I know how you feel, bud. You know how I feel. Nobody knows how I feel.
With a focus on understanding residents experiencing mental health issues, Halton will be the first police service in Canada to use this.
That's awful. That is awful. It's not a surprise. I don't think it should be a surprise to anybody in Durham anyway.
There are concerns about racism in Durham region because we see it with our clients.
No apologies tonight from the retired Durham police officer who posted an image that's being called racist and disgusting. The reaction to the drawing showing two stick-figure police officers standing over a pinned-down brown man was swift and severe. As we first showed you last night, Durham's police chief was clearly upset by it. Tonight, Durham residents are weighing in, as is the retired officer who posted the drawing. Shanifa Nasser has the latest.
Can't say I'm surprised.
Sandra Forsyth comes from a policing family. Her father and grandfather both officers in Guyana. Today, she runs a community advocacy group for Black youth in Durham. And while she knows there are good officers on the force, the Facebook post has shaken her confidence.
That's very disgusting. And that tells me that we have a long way to go.
The image was posted on a closed Facebook group of current and retired members of the Durham police force. It shows two stick figures who appear to be police standing over another stick figure with a darker face. One officer appears to be holding a stick, the other a gun. Omar Ha Redeye is the executive director of the Durham Community Legal Clinic. He's concerned the drawing was allegedly posted during the Michael Theriault trial. The off-duty Toronto officer and his brother are being tried in Oshawa for the alleged beating of teenager Defonte Miller.
That's a context that really does suggest that the youth in Durham region, and in particular some of our young people who are perceiving these high media events, these events that are in the media, are perhaps getting the wrong message here, which is that people of color are necessarily the enemy, they're necessarily criminals.
The person who admits to posting the image on the closed Facebook group is retired Durham officer Lewis Waldman. CBC Toronto obtained a screenshot of a further post from Waldman reacting to the controversy, in which he writes, quote, "While at first glance I did not see anything possibly offensive in it, some members of this group did. I will not apologize for my error," he writes, adding the person who leaked the post has thrown its members, quote, "under the bus." CBC Toronto has reached out to Waldman, but so far hasn't received a response. For his part, Durham's police chief admits this type of incident shakes the confidence of the community.
The vast majority of the people that go out every day in and day out and risk their lives for this community at times they do not support this. They do not agree with this. They are offended by it. And it won't be tolerated.
Durham's police chief tells me the post has been taken down, but they're investigating to find out if the Facebook users behind it are active members of the force. If it turns out they are, they could face a range of disciplinary action, anything from a warning to outright dismissal. Shanifa Nasser, CBC News, Whitby.
The jury now deciding the fate of two men accused of gang raping a woman in the College Street bar 3 years ago did not hear that one of the two defendants is also facing other sexual assault charges. Former bar manager Enzo de Jesus Carrasco is charged with the sexual assault of 3 other women he met through the bar. The jurors in the case were never told of the additional charges because it would have infringed on his right to a fair trial. But the information can now be published because jurors are sequestered as they deliberate. De Jesus Carrasco and Gavin McMillan, the former owner of the bar, are awaiting a verdict on allegations they sexually assaulted a woman inside the bar in December of 2016. The alleged attack was recorded on bar surveillance video. Both men face a charge of gang sexual assault, forcible confinement, and administering a stupefying drug. They've pleaded not guilty to all the charges. Halton Police using technology to help them be more empathetic. A new virtual reality training system switches their perspective from being an officer to living as someone with a mental health issue who is being approached by a police officer. Talia Ritchie tried it out.
Halton Police say this piece of technology is going to help put them in the shoes of people they might be dealing with who are experiencing mental health issues. We'll show you how it works.
You can pop that over your head there.
We have 3 modules that are there: autism, schizophrenia, and suicide prevention. They look around inside, and it's 360 degrees, and they pick which training module they want to do.
For this exercise, the person completing the training enters a virtual reality world where there's someone living with autism.
Sir, I'm going to need you to come back inside and pay for that. Sir, you have to come back inside.
So what's going on? Talk to us. What's happening?
Hey, just relax, okay? That's my shot. He's autistic. Hey, you need to stay back. You need to stay back.
For the first 2 minutes or so, you are that person who has autism, who has schizophrenic, or is in a suicidal place, and then after a couple minutes, it flips, and you are the responding officer.
We have a report of an aggressive male suspect shoplifting and fighting with an employee.
We need you to calm down.
And then they're faced with decisions. The hope is that after the officer has experienced the perspective of the person they're approaching, they'll have a new mindset.
When the officers come, you can tell that that creates a level of anxiety for them. And I think that gives me the kind of impression that I need to understand that if I arrive to that situation, I need to know that this person is in crisis and under stress.
Partner, let's kill the lights and turn the radio down, all right?
The company developing the technology says scenarios involving people with dementia or who are hard of hearing are in the works.
The nice thing about that is that you don't have to pull people off of shift for 4 hours or 8 hours. This is something that they can spend 5 minutes on in an immersive scenario on before their shift or after their shift, and then get the real development of their empathy based on those scenarios.
Go and check the store and see if you can find his parent.
All right, we'll do. I'm sorry, officer, for any trouble. He's autistic.
All right.
So right now there are those 3 scenarios, but Axon says they plan to develop 3 more in 2020. And while Halton is the first police service in Canada to use this technology, it's expected to be used across the GTA in the next couple of years. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Oakville.
I want to stay at least this shape. I don't want to go back where I was.
She started doing sit-ups and squats in her 70s. After the break, more on this Coburg woman's transformation into an Instagram fitness star. Stay with us. We're back in just 2 minutes. While he may be questionable to play in tonight's game against the Raptors, New York Knicks rookie R.J. Barrett has confirmed he will be playing for Canada this summer.
100%. I definitely plan on playing for my country this summer, and you know, very proud to say that. Try to play every summer as much as I can. So yeah, I'm 100% planning on playing.
When your dad runs Basketball Canada, I'm not sure you have a choice, young man. Barrett becomes the latest NBA star to commit to playing as the team tries to qualify for the Olympics. Nuggets star player Jamal Murray and OKC guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander also have said they will play for their country. Our national team hasn't qualified since the 2000 Sydney Games. Barrett declared his intentions to play hours before the Knicks are set to face our Raptors. It would be the Mississauga natives' first NBA home game, but the rookie might not play due to an illness. She's pushing 75 in age and hundreds of pounds in weights. 3 years ago, Joan McDonald weighed almost 200 pounds and had growing health problems. Now, the only thing growing are her biceps and her Instagram following. Here's more on the Coburg woman's transformation.
I'm going to try to lift it with my abs. I would do anything to not be in a picture. It's had to change because it was going downhill on a slippery slope, that's for sure. I was in a very negative place. Did you get it? I don't want to have to repeat it. Now I can look in the mirror and I'm happy. Sorry.
Chocolate? Peanut butter?
Yeah, let's try the chocolate peanut butter one.
On the phone, and when we did talk, there wasn't much to say. She would always kind of deride what she was up to, sort of like, oh, nothing's going on here, or what I'm up to isn't interesting, or you wouldn't want to hear about this.
I ended up on medication for high blood pressure, bad cholesterol, acid reflux, and when the doctors decided that maybe I should be on more, I go, I'm not. And Michelle had been on to me about, Mom, why don't you just join my group?
So it's just like, girls, you know, don't believe all that crap. Like, just believe that anything's possible.
And it is. The first year, I didn't mind not losing weight fast. I was more interested in taking it off and keeping it off and getting stronger. And I leveled off for quite some time, you know, losing the fat but gaining the muscle and toning up. I've eventually learned to do some of the stuff on my own.
Nice tight.
Every time we get together, it's another lesson I have to learn. Feels like we've reversed roles.
All the way down. Keep going, keep going.
I'm the daughter, she's the mom.
Women my age can empathize with that, you know, seeing your mother aging and being on medication and slowing down and all of these things, it's very frightening. And so to see Mom do a complete 180 and get her health back and then some it's phenomenal.
I don't want to go back where I was. That's motivation. And staying off my meds, I don't want to be back on that. It wasn't to get notoriety, but it ended up that way. I would answer questions and it just kept building and building and building and building and it just took off. Seems to me like it's more 40s, between 40s and 50s. You know, they've been letting stuff go, and now they're thinking, oh, maybe if you can do it, I can do it. Sure. You'll probably do better, especially if you start earlier. You'll look fabulous. And I get people, you know, saying, you look younger all the time. I see you. Maybe because I'm happier? I don't know. There's got to be a reason for that.
So we started that Instagram account. One, I'm a big believer in improving brain plasticity to help with cognitive, turning back the clock in her brain as well as turning back the clock in her body. She really connects with people. She gets teary-eyed when she's answering messages. I mean, it's a real legitimate connection she's having with people.
If I couldn't get my work in every day, I'd feel like I was missing something. It's addictive. I would love to have more people change their lives from being sickly to being stronger and being able to and capable of looking after themselves. And if they can start earlier, all the better, so that when they get to my age, no problem. I'm done for that one.
Nick had to run over and shake her hand as she walked through the newsroom today. That lady is an inspiration, buddy. It's not too late for us.
No, it's not. Did you see her doing the chin-ups?
I saw the definition in her arms. I'm going to go work on that myself.
I said,
wow.
God, I got to go home and start doing this as well. Yeah, pretty impressive stuff. Really good to see. Really inspiring. In terms of the weather, guys, we talked about the winds, we talked about the rain, we talked about the temperatures, and things are all changing. Here's a look at your weather headlines. Special weather statements still in effect right now for the winds. There's a look at that. Sunshine returns for tomorrow, but a messy mix on the way for the weekend, at least for Sunday anyway. I'm going to get to that in just a second. Let's talk about the winds first here. Still pretty gusty, gusts about 60 kilometers per hour. As we move through tonight, after about the midnight hour, a cold front's going to roll through. The winds are going to shift more out of sort of the west and then eventually the northwest, and they'll begin to die down a little bit as well. By tomorrow morning, still pretty gusty, up to about 50 kilometers per hour, but the winds are more northerly, so we've got cooler or colder temperatures coming in, and it's not until the evening where they really begin to peter out. But it will be a breezy day again tomorrow. Not quite as much as today, but still pretty breezy. We hit 10 degrees earlier today, now sitting at 7 degrees right now. Temperatures starting to come down with this system, and they will continue to drop. We're also talking about rainfall as well. Now, most of the rain is gone. Down London, southwestward, still looking at rain at this point. For us around the Golden Horseshoe, just a few on and off spotty showers. So still the chance for some wet weather tonight, but most of it has passed. Now, forecast-wise, moving into tomorrow, look for spotty showers to continue through tonight. Tomorrow morning should generally be dry, although again, a few spotty showers possible, but I think for the most part, it's just going to be dry and some cloud cover for the early morning commute. By the time we hit the late morning into the afternoon, we're back into sunshine, and that sunshine sticks around into Friday as well. So pretty good looking forecast for the next couple of days, albeit temperatures on the cooler side, certainly cooler than what we had today. For tonight, down to 3 degrees is an overnight low. The chance for a few spotty showers again. Still pretty gusty through tonight. Winds begin to peter out by tomorrow afternoon. Temperatures sit at 3 degrees for tomorrow. And then into the long-range forecast. Now, here's a look at the timestamp. Friday at 8 p.m. Okay, we're all the way back here into Colorado. This system rolls through Sunday morning. I think we're going to start to see snow. And the chance here for about 5, maybe 10 centimeters of snow on Sunday morning, then switching to ice pellets and rain. Now, it's still a few days out, so it's really hard to tell exactly what we're going to see with this, but that's the one to watch. We'll keep an eye on it coming up over the next couple of days.
We are watching. Thanks, Nick.
You bet.
It may not look like it, but this is the future of pickup trucks, or at least that's what Tesla wants it to be. After the break, more on the electric Cybertruck and the emerging market for larger e-vehicles. Stay with us. Tesla revealed its latest vehicle, an electric pickup truck. The Cybertruck, as it's called, created an instant buzz on the internet, but not all of it was positive. Ramona Pringle joins us now. Ramona, let's start with the buzz caused by this big reveal.
Well, you know, you've never seen a car that looks like this, or a pickup truck that looks like this. It looks like something that a villain would drive. It looks like something that, you know, or something that came out of a 3D printer, you know.
Back to the Future.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've seen people say that it looks more like an art project than a car, that it looks like a trapezoid, you know, it's a three-dimensional trapezoid. That they're, you know, I think people were talking about the design, they're also talking about the show. This is made of the same metal alloy that this is, Elon Musk was saying that they use for their rockets, so it's practically indestructible. He was saying that it's literally bulletproof. So in their stage show, they invited someone onto the stage with a sledgehammer, and true to his word, it didn't make a dent. But then they also had someone throw metal balls at the windows, saying that they were indestructible as well, and they ended up cracking. So of course,
you might want to try that before
right,
you do it.
Of course, the internet is going to laugh about this, but. You know, there is something to be said for the fact that this is an electric pickup, and that in and of itself, say what you will about the design in the show, that in and of itself is novel.
So why would Tesla decide to do this and make this then?
Trucks are a big market. You know, there's a higher margin with trucks and SUVs than there are for sedans, so of course automakers would want to continue launching more of them. But as of 2016, 2/3 of car sales in the US were light trucks, which is SUVs and minivans, pickup trucks. And so, you know, they want to get into this market because it's a you know, there's a huge market that's there. Now, they're not the only ones who are moving into this space.
That was going to be my next question. Will there be competition?
There's a ton of competition. This is what's fascinating is, you know, Tesla's got the name recognition when it comes to electric. I think when we think about electric vehicles, they're you know they're like the Kleenex of electric cars.
Yep, exactly.
But Ford is making an electric pickup. GM is making an electric pickup, and they are the industry leaders when it comes to those kinds of vehicles. Then there's a startup based in Michigan, and they've got a great narrative in that they moved into a derelict factory, into one of these auto plants that had been
shuttered.
Yeah, that had been shuttered in 2015 when Mitsubishi moved their production out to Japan. So there's a great story of, you know, a new kind of vehicle and bringing jobs back into an old factory that they've got, and they've got investment from everyone from Amazon to Ford. So a lot of people are saying they're the ones to watch. Their pickup is going to be more expensive than Tesla's. Tesla's already known for making expensive vehicles, and yet it'll look more like a truck. And so what's fascinating right now is that you've got the legacy companies getting into this space. You've got you know, these startups that have only ever made electric vehicles that are getting into this space. So it's not so much this issue of, you know, who's going to be first at it, because I think the aesthetics of this Cybertruck, right? It looks like what it sounds like. It's for someone who wants that look at me car. Whereas the shift to a pickup in terms of being in rural areas is a really fascinating one, but not necessarily everyone is going to want that futuristic vehicle. They want something that is rugged, that is going to, you know, do the job of a pickup.
Yeah, because if you look at the Cybertruck, it does look, as you said, futuristic. But how will this catch on then with consumers? We know, as you said, it's a big market, but are people buying electric pickups? Because when I watch the commercials for this, all I hear, they're talking about torque. They're not talking about things like this.
Well, that's right. You know, there's other considerations. So far, when you think about, you know, something like a Tesla especially, you're thinking about it in a city. But to design an electric vehicle for rural use as well as urban use means you do have to think about, you know,
where the heck these charging stations are going to be.
Where the charging stations are going to be. And that's there's a lot of parallels there with when we talk about access to high-speed internet in rural communities or northern communities. You know, to get a Tesla in the north, the consideration is, well, how do you drive it there if there aren't charging stations along the way? And what if it is rugged terrain? So there's big challenges in terms of the infrastructure that's there to support it. Although with all these companies moving into this space, if they're selling the cars, you think the likelihood is that they're going to push to have that kind of infrastructure there as well. But then there's other considerations for the vehicle itself. It does need to be able to, you know, go longer distances. They're going to be used more. They need to be more rugged. They've got to be haul more. Yeah, there's a lot of those considerations, but it is going to push these companies, put them through their paces in terms of making a vehicle that can withstand all of that. And that's where we shift from something that is niche, that is for early adopters, to something that potentially can have that mass adoption, that can be, you know, used by everyone. And so if the goal is to move electric, some of these challenges that are clearly lie ahead, like infrastructure is a huge one, need to be dealt with, need to be contended with.
Every time I talk to you, I feel like the future is here. And
It really is. I mean,
Electric
you know,
pickups,
we're
wow.
driving science fiction cars.
There we
so
go. Thanks, Ramona.
Nice to speak with you.
Whoa, watch out. It's a windy Wednesday. Nick's back with a final look at your forecast next. Wow, listen to that wind. Look at those waves. This home is getting battered by water from Lake Erie. Just like here, the southwestern part of the province faced winds of up to 90 kilometers an hour today. The video thanks to our colleagues at CBC Windsor. And Nick also does their weather while he's doing this newscast, man. Jack of all trades, master of many.
Exactly. And we were talking about that earlier today because they've got flooding along the shoreline, especially when the winds come off of the water, right? Because you've got this long fetch, and then it's not only, you know, you've got the winds that are unobstructed, but now you're also talking about the waves and the, you know, so I think they're used to that flooding, but still it's a surprise.
Yes.
You know, when you get hit by it. So is snow, by the way, like we talked about 2 weeks ago.
It
We might see
came
more
early.
of that on Sunday, yeah. Bit of a messy mix coming up for the weekend, so enjoy the nice weather while it lasts. What we're looking at for tonight is temperatures dropping to 3 degrees. A few showers, but that's really about it. 3 degrees tomorrow as well for our high, and sunny skies. That'll stick around for Friday, and then Sunday. We're still watching this one because it's going to be a mix. Now, at this point, it could go either way. We're right on the edge of it. But it looks like we might see 5-10 centimeters of snow possible. We'll keep an eye on it for tomorrow.
There's still a chance it could be slush or rain. We don't know yet.
Exactly, yeah.
Thanks, buddy. That's it for us tonight. Mike Wise has you covered at 11. Join us again tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.